Oh god, I'm going to get letters.
Let's go! 輝くマシンライダージャンライダーキー仮面ライダー仮面ライダーライダーライダー
Well, people, it's finally time for me to look at another Sentai series. An officially licensed one at that, and yet another one from the 90s. I can't seem to get away from the 90s Sentai, can I?
Kyoryu Sentai's Zyuranger popped up as transition in Sentai was taking place. Hirohisa Soda, the head writer for most Showa Sentai, hit burnout during Turbo Ranger, leaving the series' 5-man to be infamously bad. It left Sentai in a state where its viability was questioned, Toei keeping an active eye on the show for years and coming to ask whether they should even keep Sentai going, a series passing their checkmark if it showed itself as doing financially well within a certain period. If it was lagging, they'd mandate the series be changed and find a way to improve it. This didn't happen with Jetman, which I reviewed in 2014.
If you've not seen those videos, I liked the show. It did save Super Sentai at that time, but I found it overhyped and wasted some story and drama potential that could have made it even better than it was. Go watch those videos for clarification. Sorry about the audio issues. I worked with what I had.
But Sentai suffered because of its own success in this instance. Fans wanted more shows like Jetman. Not in story, but in style. Serialization, serious weight to the events, menacing villains, complex, realistic characterization, romantic subplots, fun, setting appropriate silliness were palatable. You know, the general list of things people see as the merits to Sentai.
The new producer in charge of Zyuranger, however, wanted a show nothing like Jetman. They wanted an exclusively child demographic fantasy series, refusing to recognize older and broader demographics the show appealed to, and which the genre is heavily reliant on, especially these days with Japan's declining child population, and proceeded to mandate the stories now focus on guest child actors over having the story be about the leads of the show, a throwback to a story element whose use was rarely seen and had declined even from that for a reason. Seriously, who would be that blind and tone-deaf to the actual— Oh god, not him.
Yeah, this is one of Shinichiro Shirakura's earliest production credits on record, as far as people can find. I don't mean to scapegoat the guy out of nowhere, but since I learned of him last year, a lot of questionable decisions, foolhardy policy, disrespect to the material, and audience-alienating actions suddenly have a common name involved in their production due to how hands-on he tends to be.
And it's not resulted in a net sum of good, in my opinion, to the point I've begun to blacklist anything he's actively involved in.
For those waiting to correct me on this, yes, Takayuki Suzuki, the producer for a chunk of the preceding Sentai series, was also a producer on this show. But to my research, Suzuki has a pretty hands-off reputation to begin with, unlike his associate, and had more moved into an executive producer role distant out from the day-to-day, starting with Zyuranger. And to be fair, a series that wanted to get younger viewers back in is not a bad idea at all. It's the execution and exclusion of other demographics the show has always appealed to which was more of an issue, as it gave an excuse to do the thing you should never do as a professional writer. Write down to your audience. Which was not a good thing for Noboru Sugimura, Sentai's new head writer. Episodes for the show also being written by Toshiki Inoue, Kyoko Sagayama, Susumu Takaku, Naruhisa Awakawa, and Kenichi Araki. For Sugimura was given the position mainly as he'd over the prior years become Toei's new goldmine for success. Most notably for our purposes, the main storyline for Kamen Rider Black.
And from what I've seen, and of course reviewed of his work from before and after this, he is a good writer when he's allowed to be.
Not without his bad content, certainly, but his ability is more prominently showcased in other works than it is here. As we have interviews proclaiming how Shirakura would mandate what Sugimura would write, the man having a very difficult time with the show due to having little creative freedom or ability to properly flesh out the story, and in ways that are consistent with later Shirakura-produced crap. The show initially, from what I've read, not being very well received. I think you can probably guess what they pulled to fix that.
Suffice it to say, I totally get the fall-off in quality described when going from Jetman to Zyuranger.
For Jetman ends with one of the most tragic deaths in Sentai, one validated by the tone and setting the story presented, and then the next week, Zyuranger opens with two kids taking on a mission to an alien world for no justifiable reason at all, which instantly breaks suspension of disbelief.
I mean, yeah, not every series needs to be like Jetman or the exact same in the exact same ways. I totally agree with the points there. It's just, the tonal whiplash and divergence in quality is ridiculously extreme. And one of the reasons I put this off, as such a reputation precedes it by miles. The show can get really frustrating to watch when you put any amount of thought into what is going on. And since I am an overanalytical jackass who can't turn off the brain, oh my do I have critiques.
As for why I'm pronouncing the Zu in Zyuranger with the Z sound as opposed to the J it should be spelled and pronounced with, since the Zu is supposed to translate as Jew, meaning beast, and this seemingly being in contradiction to when I last brought up this translation error in the Mega Ranger videos, well, honestly, it's a combination of me just plain mispronouncing the word after being repeatedly told that's what it was for years. Thus, I'm unfortunately stuck with such, as I do it unconsciously. This is part of why I'm usually a bit anal about JZ misromanizations and endeavor to not do it anywhere else. It being spoken that way pretty often in the show and said that way later on because it's Toei's official romanization of the word, and more importantly, the Z in Zu being one of the team's thematic motifs, with it appearing on their equipment, specifically on the back of the Dino Buckler and on Dragon Caesar. The giant Z is on its feet, becoming visible when it combines with the other mechs, and also in some of their attacks. Meaning it's not actually entirely inaccurate to say it with the Z, as its presence is reinforced in the show itself and leans way to them retaining it.
But to expand on when I addressed this in passing last year, Japan normally does not use the ZI sound, as opposed to za, zu, ze, or zo that do see regular use. For words originating from their language, this is almost always pronounced with a J. And the conflict in this spelling originates from a dispute in romanization styles.
Said styles being Hepburn romanization, whose intent is to keep Japanese originating words matching with their pronunciation, not always taken to be literal, but making it more easy to say to non-native speakers, alongside what is taught internationally since Japanese is normally a very literal language, despite many of their words carrying secondary meanings. The other being Kunrei Shiki, which is Japan's national romanization style, and matches older ways of pronouncing words, particularly in relation to the language's origins in Mandarin Chinese, and where the ZI instead of JI thing pops up, at least in classical Kunrei Shiki. The modern iteration of the script has more moved to match up the two styles in spelling, but the methodology for how things are romanized has not changed, and thus where the problems usually pop up. Shout Factory's translation appears to follow Kunrei Shiki romanization, some of the time, but doesn't fully account for everything. An example, they have renamed most of the combination mechs with Zine, when their names are all spelled with a kanji pronounced as Jin, meaning in this case Kami or God.
So it does explain one aspect of Shout Factory's release of the show, but not all. There being issues of consistency, censorship, and other questionable translations.
Such was avoided in the releases by both Grown Ups in Spandex and TV Nihon, said releases having been discontinued due to the proper licensing and distribution of the show in this form, requiring they legally be removed.
Yeah, I watched all three. The fan subs were about equal in quality, but the legal DVDs are firmly in third place, though the only ones you can get now. To be clear, they're not awful, they're just erroneous on certain things, and it's only notable because it's a professional production that we expect better of than the fan groups where the occasional error is simply expected. And these days the better groups are pretty consistent about correction or keeping citation of such. I just tend to be a stickler on the names thing, as it can prove to be a sign of much deeper issues if it's not a one-off mistake or misdetail.
I'm not the only one to have this critique of them, however, and this was brought to DVD producer Brian Ward's attention to be fixed in the following sets released.
I will snark at some of this stuff, however, but it was nice to hear positive feedback to constructive criticism, and I'm still going to be rooting for them and buying the sets as long as they're putting them out. I really want them to at the very least get through Time Ranger.
The opening to Kyoryu Sentai Zyuranger is Kyoryu Sentai Zyuranger. And I don't find it a very good song. Once more, it's poorly paced, not dynamically shot, and I feel haphazardly edited.
And to double up on the MST3K reference, guess what each of the characters are doing when they're introduced in the credits?
And the answer is...
Dull surprise!
So you're wrong!
Dull surprise! Dull surprise! I'm gonna say dull surprise. Dull surprise! Dull surprise?
Yes, dull
Dull
surprise.
surprise, dull surprise, dull surprise.
Yeah, the lyrics are pretty empty as well, singing the praises of these heroes from a fantasy land far beyond time and space, and I honestly just skipped it in every episode I watched.
I'll give it this, it's better than the other original music in the show, as opposed to the more enjoyable tracks it recycles from Jetman, alongside its cockpit sets. Zyuranger had a lot of budgetary issues, by the way.
We open on a space shuttle taking a trip to planet Nemesis, which orbits the sun so slowly it only nears the planet every 230 million years.
Or it's just a rogue planet. Our solar system makes one orbit around the center of our galaxy in that time.
Well, anyways, the ship heads to Nemesis with 2 children on board. Yeah, this breaks me every time I see it. No one would ever send children on such a mission! No one! For me at least, doing this irreparably breaks the setting of the series from the first minute of it, as it doesn't run on any form of real-world logic by which to bridge its events to something people can understand. Then again, the following actions by the astronauts leading the mission shows their entire organization may just be that brain-dead stupid, because instead of telling someone they found something, they just open it and thus release the Ark of the Covenant. All of the evils of the past released! And taking the form of flying monkeys, the evil witch of the west, and their little dog Toto too!
Okay, this is going to factor into some of my negativity, and it's not fair. I admit that it's not fair, but I hate The Wizard of Oz. I really, really do. As a child, my parents dragged me to event after event, movie rescreening after movie rescreening, play after play on both the professional and school reenactment scale when I never even liked the film in the first place. I can't stand it!
And the series antagonist, Witch Bandora, alongside her gang, are all based on that tale as part of this series, basing both its good and bad guys on fantastical beasts and where to find them.
Wait, no, wrong series.
Her counterpart Rita Repulsa got involved in things enough that the reference never fully gelled there, but it's more obvious with Bandora in what they were going for. Well, after being stuck in a space dumpster for 170 million years...
Wait, then how the hell did they end up on Nemesis if she was banished from Earth all that time ago when Nemesis wasn't anywhere near Earth then?
Bandora banishes the 2 astronauts from the planet, because they are adults, and thus are expendable to the narrative, and thus now go off to die in space.
And people wonder why parent watch groups might take issue with the content and desire to pull it off the air, if this is when you pull in something you are targeting solely to children and no one else.
And with that done, it's time to conquer Earth! Bandora creates her palace. Oh look, it even has an English misspelling on it, with which to begin said conquest, such beginning with her telekinetically moving buildings, which destroy the region and kill a lot of people.
Too bad it's Sunday. Those buildings would have been filled up tomorrow.
Hey now, no need to work too hard. From evidence, it already is.
Well, as she proceeds to talk down to everyone about how awful everyone is, we see an old man who reveals himself as Barza, an immortal from a fairy tribe who has history with Bandora, and has awaited her return, even though she rendered him powerless as she stole his knowledge of magic.
Dude, it's been 170 million years. Did your magic textbooks get stolen or something?
But yeah, all he's done for the last 170 million years, outside of grunt work to keep himself fed, is guard the warriors charged to prevent Bandora's conquest of the world. Dude, probably could have learned your magic abilities by now. Anyways, he now uses a set of keys to unlock and free the warriors. And say hello to our heroes! Goshi! Boy! Mei!
Yeah, no. What the hell, Barza?
Dan! And Wait, what do you mean Geki's key is broken? Panic!
We've oddly enough already met some of the cast through my previous reviews.
Yuta Mochizuki is Kamen Rider J, no explanation needed. Hideaki Fujiwara played Birdman Dan last year in Jetman, and Boy's actor, Takumi Hashimoto, was likewise Jiro Iwamoto, one of the recurring classmates of the Mega Ranger.
Takumi Hashimoto is also the first main cast actor on Super Sentai to be born after Sentai premiered. Incidentally, everyone puts out a much better performance in other material.
But yeah, the two brats from the ship were only put on the ship to give Bandora easy hostages with which to motivate the Zyuranger to rush her palace. Except she is already their mortal enemy, so it would make sense for them to do that anyways since she is on the planet. She after this moves her palace to the moon and spends most of her time in it, out of reach of any of the Zyuranger, thus able to continue her campaign against them in safety. This is the only time in the show they have that window until its conclusion, thus this early hostage-taking is unnecessary. Hell, she could have grabbed anyone on Earth for this and stuffed them in the spaceship she took as a souvenir with which to challenge the Zyuranger to either save the hostages or attack her. It's really only there to establish her hatred for children and, again, she could have just stolen people off the streets to do the same.
This is why the kids on the space mission thing breaks the setting for me, as it's unnecessary.
Either way, this series does not start off showing the Zyuranger as competent at all. The implication with them being the sealed warriors meant to counter Bandora is they would be familiar with her tricks and tactics from the past war that is never really elaborated on, thus wouldn't fall for pretty much every one of her schemes. From what we learn later, it kind of feels as if they got their position out of nepotism. But now begins Zyuranger's frustrating trend of solving all its problems, not with their own skills, talents, abilities, or intelligence, but with Deus Ex Machina. The guardian beasts, essentially robotic god versions of now extinct animals, blasting open Geki's chamber so we can save the others. And thus they transform together after Barza gives them the Dido metals that are required to power their transformation trinkets. Shouldn't they have those already? Because otherwise they just rushed into battle with no way to defend themselves from her magics.
Okay, yet another bit of heresy. I'm not a fan of the Zyuranger suits.
Outside of the helmet, there's no real tying into the extinct animal theme this show has. Just these diamond powders of either white or their color. It's decently broken up so they're not just color blobs, but it doesn't make them the most interesting. But victory is stolen from them, quite easily, by Bandora's Dora Titan. I'd make the Attack on Titan joke, but at this point I really just do not care.
As I'm baffled in how, right after they are unsealed, they already have and know how to drive their own team-customized motorcycles? Did Barza make those?
Stupid people on television argue over what's the cause, none of them actually citing anything of note, as the Zyuranger is shown back in the temple with Dan goofing off. The hell? If it's there to establish their characters, it does it really badly. We get some basic exposition on the team's origins, that they are from a fantasy kingdom 170 million years ago.
And every time I hear that, the numbers cited for the ancient human civilization in Ultra Antigua become less and less ludicrous.
Where humans and dinosaurs lived in harmony.
Humans and animals honored each other, and everyone respected the importance of nature. There was nothing but joy and beauty in all our lives.
Then everything changed when the Bandora tribe attacked, slaughtering mostly everyone. And this is all presented as exposition being told by Geki to everyone else of the group when they should already all know this.
You guys have a narrator, Toru Ohira. Why didn't you use him for this?
You see, they just didn't care.
Well, eventually the Guardian Beast stepped in and saved the civilization for them, sealing Bandora in her capsule that, thanks to blatant stupidity, has now been unleashed.
You know, had they banished her to the moon for 10,000 years, most of this would make more sense.
I bring this up as Bandora sets up shop on the moon, and is perfectly content to be there and away from pretty much everyone.
So content that, well, okay, I can understand her hatred of kids. I'm generally not fond of them myself, as I associate a lot of them solely to feelings of pain, but why does she even want to attack and destroy / rule the world? Oh yeah, that.
This is something given at, I'm not even kidding with this, the exact end of the series to supposedly justify Pandora's actions in retrospect. Her son Kai was killed running from a Tyrannosaurus after he impulsively broke open a group of dinosaur eggs that, with all honesty, looked like they were not even fertilized, so it wasn't as if it was a life taken in exchange for unborn life. She came across his body and, as she was only beginning to mourn, was approached by the entity known as Great Satan, who convinced her to turn her wrath at the dinosaurs that caused it. Kill them as they murdered her son, and this turning her into the evil witch she is. However, Great Satan has effectively locked her into the anger stage in the cycle of grief, and thus made her spiteful to everyone and everything she once cherished, seeing the joy in kids as happiness that was robbed from her son.
They don't put any of this in those terms, however, or anywhere close to them. And I spoiled this as this contextual reactions is not once alluded to, nor is consistent with the grand majority of her actions. It's just an after-the-thought retcon to give her something, anything, to explain why she's done all this.
Some say it's supposed to be analogous to the falling to the dark side of the Force trope in Star Wars, but honestly that doesn't work for me as that never even worked in Star Wars. The petulant antics of those going through that, robbing any agency a villain committing it has.
And I say that about Kylo Ren in The Force Awakens and not just Anakin. I found him an awful villain.
And it doesn't reflect Bandora, as she's not internalizing her emotions and directing them at the self, but lashing out her pain upon others to make her feel better, instead of actually focusing it on the parties responsible. In ancient times, she wanted the dinosaurs dead for the life taken, which is at the point the Guardian Beasts actually caused the Great War by getting those that worshipped them involved in all of this before they came in to mop things up. With the great powers we see from them later down the line, it's amazing they never once considered just trying to end things by giving her son back.
Because we do see later, before this revelation occurs, that they can either do that or get another phase spirit to. This is why I say it's a retconning explanation, as it was the out to avoid all of this.
Which kind of brings us to our heroes in all of this. I'm not entirely certain they're human. They could be from human-like phase species that could exist all that time ago, as it's a longer period of time from then to the extinction of the dinosaurs than it is from the extinction of the dinosaurs to the modern era, or even the evolution of humanity. That number is just so large, it's an inconceivably long time even to a child, to the point even adults often fail to conceptualize how huge a span of time that is.
Hell, it's possible due to how they act, and how their actors portray them with the exact same shout-yelling all the kids say their lines in, that they're actually also children who only had their aging slowed by the stasis, despite the series saying that they're in their teens or early 20s, as they do seem to act kind of juvenile. Or is this the one sole expression of them being from a more naive time that this was more the expected standard?
But hey, if they're phase spirits, it actually explains a lot about their naivete and general gravitation towards the innocent spirits of children.
Either is possible because the storytelling in the show is that weak, but it was not likely intended.
Well anyways, Pleprecon shows himself as Bandora's monster maker, using his clay sculptures in tandem with an alchemy machine to create not only her foot soldiers, called golems, but her various Dora monsters, revealing... Direct me to Ikebukuro. I have a score to settle with a Doulahan. Totpat and Bookback in turn have shown they've turned the shrunken shuttle into a remote-controlled vehicle.
You had electronics 170 million years in the past?
The Zeus chase after it, only to be attacked by the Skeleton Man, who proceeds to break all of their weapons. Well, as they try to battle the creatures, the show once more showcases how it's going to solve everything. Deus Ex Machina no Jutsu! Showcasing the arrival of the Guardian Beast Tyrannosaurus, which Geki boards to do battle with the creatures on the macro scale. They finally succeed in rescuing the kids from being killed by explosives the goons set, leaving Bandora nothing to do but give birth to one of the longest-running gags in this genre. However, Zyuranger's opening arc does not end there. Good thing, too, is these 2 episodes were just plain terrible. It continues on with episode 3, with the realization that no weapons Barza has kept hidden away for them will be able to withstand combat conditions. Though I'm honestly amazed they didn't decompose or rust away over the 100 million years as it is. Thus, they need to either forge new ones or obtain some type of noble phantasm, to which Barza reveals himself as the quest giver, telling of a group of ancient warriors that slew a 5-headed dragon. When they killed it, 5 weapons that matched the weapon thematics of the warriors of their 5 tribes were found inside the stumps of its heads, but were then sealed away because... magic quest reward, I don't know.
What? I buy it. Have you never looted a body in a video game for epic gear?
Barza can send them to the transdimensional island they're kept at, warning that they only have a day to complete the quest, and the realm will entomb them in stone if they feel despair, preventing them from succeeding.
No. Falling into despair turns you into a phantom.
Coincidentally, however, this is exactly where Bandora sent a boy and his mother to torment them because... evil? I mean, it would make sense if she did this to subvert them and thus make them split up for the forces she does send after them to potentially take them down, but she does this before they go on the quest. Hell, if she was focused on spying on them as the show later reveals she can do, then she could have focused her time on casting curses and spells to subvert them on their quest to try and prevent them from getting the weapons, either causing them to fail the quest as they have to return in order to not be trapped there, thus are weaker overall against her forces, or be turned to stone and out of her way. But by prioritizing being spiteful to children as opposed to her enemies, she misses the best chance she has early on to best subvert them. And when she does actually get her act together and sends a monster after them, it's shown she's too late, the team first calling on all of their mechs, which of course look glorious. But while they deal with that, the boy that they've rescued suddenly becomes inconsolable with absolutely no prompting or reason behind it, which causes him enough sudden, out-of-place and inappropriate despair to turn him to stone. Somehow 12 hours have passed in 10 minutes, night falling and freezing the area, no closer to finding the weapons. And of course, the Guardian Beast refused to help them when asked, as this is something that needs to be earned.
Then a ninja could learn something from these jerks.
Shut up, Dan! So suddenly the story time skips again to the final hour, the lot finding the castle the weapons are held in, only to find a single sword of evil!
Wow, is this a missed opportunity for the coming Barai arc? Also, this has to be the alternate ending.
Well, they're challenged to draw the sword and overcome its evil, which Geki does, allowing them to retrieve the orange legendary gear just in time for the raid on Blackrock Spire. Leroy Jenkins! Unfortunately, how the hell did Bandora get in here before them? She slows them long enough for their time limit to expire, causing Geki to appeal to the weapons themselves?
No. You guys failed the quest. You reached the weapons, but did not grasp them nor claim them in the time limit, which was the end goal. That was the win condition. They are the NPC you reached to turn in the quest. Bandora did not cheat. She made it so you would waste your own time. and you did not reach them in that time, thus you get no reward. You lose! Good day, sir!
Deus Ex Machina no Jutsu! Yeah, the god is in the machine because the weapons are sentient enough to come to them and undo the layered protections keeping them safe and in their positions, which should prevent them from doing this. Also, the sentience from them is never once seen again. Though now when they transform, they have the...
Okay, that's correct, but... This is like a minute apart, and it's not the only time this happens either.
Well, with these new weapons, they can now combine them back into the five-headed dragon they were birthed from, as the Howling Cannon! With the weapon's claim, the curse can be lifted, but once more inconsistently, the boy's mother never having been turned to stone despite being there longer than anyone else, and somehow restoring her kid. Yes, that's bad news for every other warrior in stone that was just left here. Our heroes, ladies and gentlemen! Next we had... Pee-wee Herman?
What is going on here? Why do you in the 90s look older than you do in 2016, Paul Rubens? You're a sphinx.
Yep, didn't even need my Power Rangers-based memories of its stock footage to tell what that is.
Man.
Seriously, it's just that obvious. And why is it every Sphinx in fiction uses that question?
Well, it's not just whisking brats into the cornfields, it's sealing them in trees which are part of a forest that, in a few days, will be cut down by loggers, thus killing the lot of them!
Diabolical.
And what are the Zyurangers doing while this is happening?
Shut up, Dan. God, you're like Dax from Overdrive, but you're actually annoying to me as you lack the filler of trying and failing to be helpful. Yeah, I don't find Dax annoying in Overdrive, it's weird.
And no, the Zyuranger are not taking the time to acclimate themselves to the modern era. Dan is just trying to pick up women. On his own patrol, Boy is the one tipped off to the Sphinx's antics, and fails the riddle asked of him. Geki sees a vision, later revealed to have been sent by the guardian beasts, of the world's ruin which sets him on edge, and inevitably leads to him stuck alone, as the others all fail to answer the Sphinx's riddles. And he is drawn into this vision yet again, the guardian beasts bringing him here to tell him of their combination, Daijujin, which, once more I must reiterate, is misspelled as Daijuzin, due to the kanji the name is spelled with not making it applicable for that cross-romanization JZ issue. However, it's something that can only be created with the 5 members of the team together.
This is later shown to be a lie, but in a way that varies wildly in consistency, as they can sometimes do it with 4 or 3 members present.
And also once they recover the Dino Crystals, components which unlock this ability once they're in the Guardian Beast's cockpits.
So, here's a question. Why are all the Guardian Beasts robots in the first place? I mean, it's implied they've always been robots, so what? Since the show resolves all of its problems with Deus Ex Machina anyways, did they want the gods and machines related to that expression to be literal?
So yeah, Geki wakes up from his vision and goes a-questing for the Dino Crystals, which is entirely taken up by a long fight scene with Grifforzer and the Sphinx in accordance with Shirakura's commitment to action and style over substance. For after Geki struggles for a predetermined length of time, Deus Ex Machina no Jutsu!
I'd complain, but I've seen it done worse when they just hand them the power-up.
Well, with the Dino Crystals revealed, they're sent to their owners, who are thus freed, and summon the mechs to bring them all together. I just love intermediary stage mechs like this, and it's a bit sad Bandai hasn't done more of them, as wow does Dino Tanker look awesome, as does Daijujin once it enters its proper high stance mode. However, despite the giant monster robot ball happening right next to the forest, the loggers sent to cut down the trees who've shown up don't even bother to evacuate the area despite being in danger. Are you that stupid?
Do you guys get time and a half for working during monster attacks or something? Or is the toy universe just that acclimated to such?
Realizing it can't win in an outright fight, the Sphinx returns to what it's good at, giving them riddles they must answer on threat of magic penalty that even affect them in the mech.
The problem? Half of its riddles are contemporary references neither of them should even know.
Seriously, I don't know how they missed this. They're from the past. Pandora has been sealed in a trash can so her clique wouldn't know this stuff. Sphinx isn't even a week old. And the Zyurangers have taken no time to adjust to the era. Do not even get into how they would not have assimilated to the point of even being aware of these answers.
Doesn't anyone notice this? I feel like I'm taking crazy pills!
The only way they defeat it is by tricking it into asking about its weakness, only for them to fail the question and it to reveal that weakness itself. However, since they failed the question, it should mean they lost outright and thus should be subject to the Sphinx's penalty game. Meaning, congratulations! The Zyuranger just doomed the world! Deus Ex Machina no Jutsu! Their kids are saved, but... wait. Wasn't Griforzer also part of that battle? Well, I guess he had enough for the day, retreating to return to the moon before they can actually deal with him.
One day I'm gonna get that filthy animal! And thus concludes the 6th episode opening arc to Zyuranger. Where do I even begin?
I don't find this a particularly good opening arc for the show, and while it's not the worst stretch of episodes, it's not exactly engaging either. Though with reflection, I'm more apathetic to it than anything. We know nothing about the heroes, little about anyone's backstory or motivations beyond the generic. We don't understand the scope of the conflict, nor the limitations of the powers involved, which are all either not addressed or made up on the fly later in a way inconsistent to other uses. It fails to really set up and ground the show, just continuing to throw thing after thing and send them on quest after quest without giving the downtime to establish things concretely, just filling it with stuff.
I usually give a series 5 episodes to sell me on whether I'd enjoy it and want to keep watching, and while it didn't repulse me, its failure to properly set up the ongoing story made it frustrating, as they just kept rushing to the next event to keep one from thinking about it. A problem that would never be solved in the following episodes. And as you can probably tell by now, I have major issue with how this series tells its stories.
It's really not justified by this point-blank demand of it being a show solely written for children, as this show appears to run on a list of things not to do when constructing a story. It doesn't matter if it's something for kids, when comparable programming does not suffer from the same failings.
Which I will showcase more of and elaborate on, and get to many better episodes, when we return to this series next week. See you there.
You